going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this. Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube and rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. What's going on? It's been a full week and a day since we've done a live show. How are we doing out there? We have a lot to go through. Sorry we weren't able to go through everything on Sunday. I really wanted to kind of get a good list together of a lot of the risers and the fallers coming out of the Senior Bowl and also the Shrine Bowl. Shrine Bowl, we'll talk about really quick, but really the Senior Bowl is what we're going to be going into and really kind of diving into with everything. Also, what's going on, Bears Bones? What's going on, Chad? How are we doing today? It's a little different, right? Going live on a Monday, but hey, love to be back. Love to be doing the show. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Just X, what's good, my friend, as well, and bear down. So lots of stuff has been going on throughout this week. We've been trying to cover a lot of the draft side of things. So I'll be trying to just push out a couple more episodes just to kind of break down some of the stuff, right? Because the Cliff Kingsbury news has been blowing up Bears Twitter and everyone's kind of freaking out about that. It's just a coaching hire. From what I've been seeing, it also seemed like there was a contract dispute between him and the Raiders, and that's why he ultimately left. But ultimately, we'll see what ends up going on with the Bears. But let's flip over to the draft, shall we? Let's talk a little bit about the Shrine Bowl because there was a lot that was going on with the Shrine Bowl. Everybody focuses on the Senior Bowl, but the Shrine Bowl still has a handful of things. Let me know down in the comments, did you actually watch the Shrine Bowl? Because I was out on vacation with the family, still kind of recovering a little bit. I might have COVID, I'm not sure yet. But with this, I sat down, rewatched the Shrine Bowl, watched what was going on with everything, and there was a couple key takeaways. Now, I'm not going to do a lot of fallers for the Shrine Bowl in particular because the Shrine Bowl, you don't necessarily have the top tier talent. No offense to the Shrine Bowl players, but there were still good people that we were looking at. There was a lot, and if you listen to the episode, we highlighted someone that, and a lot of the people that we highlighted ended up being big risers from that Shrine Bowl. And one of the people that I really want to talk about is Malik Washington. And this was someone that we discussed, like I mentioned before, right? Malik Washington out of Virginia, played his college game at Northwestern, was someone that really rose up draft boards after the Shrine Bowl game because he was just unguardable. People were like, okay, this guy's the real deal. He's unguardable in practice. Try to go after him. And Malik Washington really did show what type of a receiver he was, and he's already rising up a lot of draft boards. We said that the comp was Tank Dell, and he really kind of had that Tank Dell level of impact when he went to the Shrine Bowl. Now, Tank Dell was at the Senior Bowl, but still Malik Washington, definitely someone to look out for. Still smaller, 5'8", 194, but really a truly talented player that can dominate inside of that slot and just was absolutely cooking everybody out there. And also, Just X saying, why does most NFL analysis think Washington is a better player? Right? I totally agree. Why do most people, why is all the chatter about Bears versus Washington? Washington's not a better place than Chicago. Chicago's the bigger media market and everything. And that's where I think a lot of the more stories that we get, and this is kind of a little on the side about the whole Caleb Williams piece. The more times that people bring this up, it just seems like it's just a narrative. It just seems like it's something that's kind of being fabricated. We kind of grasp on the little pieces. And obviously all the stuff that Colin Cowherd was saying just kind of spun everybody up into a big tizzy. And I think ultimately Caleb Williams is going to go where he goes. And you look at what the true insiders like Adam Schefter are saying. Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, they are saying that there's nothing to see here, that there's nothing going on. There's nothing crazy. There's nothing insane. And you hear what Cliff Kingsbury, or not Cliff Kingsbury, Lincoln Riley was saying. He's going to play anywhere. He's going to play wherever the heck he wants to go. He's going to go wherever he needs to, and he's going to play. So I really do think that it's all just kind of smoke and mirrors with what's going on with everything. But also Chad out there, Malik Washington would make a good addition to the Bears. Yeah, late round. You look at what the Texans did. They added Tank Dell later on, and I don't think he's going to be as good as Tank Dell, but he's still he's a comp, right? Tank Dell really burst onto the scene, and I think that Malik Washington could definitely do something similar, at least be an impact from the later rounds. But let's continue to another person that really impressed, and during that Shrine Bowl, Dalen Holker. And this is another person that we previewed. And Holker, to me, he's that tight end out of Colorado State, 6'5", 235, so more of that big slot type of a weapon. And you just see him catching out there. He's a very natural receiver when the ball's in the air, when the ball gets into his hands. Now, does this mean that he's going to be and also I think that the comp is not Darren Waller. I forgot to delete that again. To me, he also kind of reminds me of what Daniel Brown that the Bears had back in the day, where he was a good receiver, but not necessarily the best blocker out of all pieces. But Holker, very good later round tight end that the Bears could potentially target kind of late or early day 3, but he has a very, very high ceiling when it comes to the receiving aspect. And like we said, he played 267 slot snaps and 5.9% drop, which is very good. Just really not a good blocker, but just continue to show that he was a good receiver. At the very beginning of the game also, he was the only receiver that actually caught passes, and he's the tight end. So it just kind of shows more about what type of a true receiver Holker could be. Now also, I'll talk about the last person that we previewed that really did impress as well, and that is the right guard / left guard, Christian Mahogany out of Boston College. Now, if anybody watches the tape or watched the game, this guy reminds me of Tevin Jenkins. He reminds me of Tevin Jenkins, just the size, profile, the big-bodied guy, very good athlete, very good burst. He's definitely someone to keep an eye out for. He matches the size that the Bears would want in an offensive lineman, what Ryan Poles is trying to target as a guard. I think ultimately Christian Mahogany is someone the Bears think that they could probably coach up so that he can be a really, really good guard at the next level. He needs good coaching, though. I think that's the big piece. He still needs you don't watch his tape and go, man, this guy is constantly sitting in his stance perfectly. He needs a lot of coaching, but he's just the talent, the raw athleticism. It doesn't mean he's a bad blocker. It just means that he has a lot of room for growth at that guard position. But yet again, someone who really did impress at practices and also during the game. Now let's talk about two other people that I have not talked about enough. And the people that really kind of were the unknowns that really shined in the Shrine Bowl. Josh Cephas, UTSA wide receiver. If you've never heard of him, neither did most people before going into this. Josh Cephas is a 6'3" wide receiver. Last year had 89 receptions, 1,151 yards, and 10 touchdowns. He was someone that came in, looked very disciplined, played very well, very tall player, even scored a touchdown during the Shrine Bowl, was someone that really turned a lot of heads. Now people are grinding the tape, and a lot of people are impressed. He made a lot of money going from a potential undrafted to someone who's definitely going to be drafted. I still think that he's going to probably be maybe all the way up at the top of the 3rd round, but Josh Cephas, someone to watch out for out of UTSA. And the last person, you might have already, if you grind mock drafts like I do and like most Bears fans, you might have seen this guy go up a lot of boards already. Dadrian Taylor Demerson, safety out of Texas Tech. Now he's projected, yet again, another kind of undrafted person because people were saying he's 5'10", he's too small to play. And now he's going all the way up to the top of the 3rd of day 3 and kind of creeping into that late 3rd round conversation because there's really not a dominant safety that's out there. So that's where the safety class is really kind of all over the place. And Taylor Demerson was someone, why did he turn a lot of heads? He made a good handful of interceptions during the practice. I even think that he made one in the game. But even though he's smaller, what coaches are looking for is, do you understand the playbook? Demerson was instantly out there telling people where they need to line up, where they need to go. Definitely very large IQ for this safety, someone that has made a lot of money at the Shrine Bowl. Now, I said that we were going to go quick, just 10 minutes, right? Just to kind of break down the Shrine Bowl. Like I said, I'm not going to go through fallers for that. That's why we got to talk about the Senior Bowl. And the Senior Bowl, the reason why the Senior Bowl is so important is the Bears and Ryan Poles loves to draft out of the Senior Bowl. I think I'm going to do a mock draft of people that went to the Senior Bowl and had and kind of have that RAS score, that super high athletic score, because those are the people that the Bears are going to be drafting, because it seems like we always have that. Darnell Wright, really impressed at the Senior Bowl, high RAS score, gets drafted. Same thing with Braxton Jones. And I believe also Javon Dexter and Zach Pickens were other people that were out there as well. But let's talk about on the passing side, right? Some of the risers. And one of the biggest risers out there was, let's start with the quarterback position. Spencer Rattler was someone that made a lot of money this weekend. Spencer Rattler, obviously, we know he was the kind of seen as the Caleb Williams before Caleb Williams. He was the guy that under Lincoln Riley, people were saying you got to tank for. And then Lincoln Riley said, listen, I'm not going to play you. I'm going to play Caleb Williams instead. And ultimately, Spencer Rattler was kind of left out to dry. And Spencer Rattler rattled around and went over to, I think, South Carolina, ultimately played very well, and you saw some of that talent. Because with this quarterback group, you really started to see a divide between the top talent and more that bottom talent. But Spencer Rattler made a good chunk of change over the Senior Bowl week. But other players that looked pretty good, because there's a lot of good quarterbacks out there. And I have my updated quarterback rankings, and really, I think that Michael Pratt and Spencer Rattler kind of are the only people that I consider in that late day 2 range, early day 3. But some people that made some good, that look good. Bo Nix, yet again, Bo Nix was out there and just showed who Bo Nix was. We all know that Bo Nix is someone who is a good pocket passer, someone that does very well in the short, intermediate type of range. And during the game, too, he made a handful of pretty good deep ball passes, if I do say so myself. Bo Nix looked pretty darn good. But then also another quarterback that looked solid, Michael Penix Jr. He didn't play in the game, but yet again, everyone that was there was like, listen, Penix, we already knew this, right? But he just has that fastball. He has that really good throw. So it's not like all of a sudden they're going to be vaulting up like crazy, but they just look good. They kind of looked as expected, as advertised as we really were thinking. But really, someone who made a lot of money is the wide receiver, Roman Wilson out of Michigan. Now, this is someone who was not high on a lot of people's boards. He was typically more of like a third rounder, maybe early day 3. And now Roman Wilson seems to have vaulted up in the conversation for a second round wide receiver. And why is that? He was really just separating from everyone all the time and consistently looked good. And I think that's the key piece. How consistent do you look against everybody else that's out there? Roman Wilson already had good tape. I already had him as a late, I think I just gave him a day 2 grade. But after this, a lot of people are saying he's easily second round. So definitely someone always open, caught everything. And that was also another story during the Senior Bowl. A lot of drops during the practices. So a lot of the wide receivers not really making good names for themselves. But one wide receiver that looked really good, really crisp in and out of routes and really made a name for himself. Just kind of validated that this guy is no slouch. This guy is a good wide receiver. And that is no one else than, wait for it, the one, the only, wait, do I have his profile? Here we go. Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey, he might be the stereotype like we said, right? But man, he was good. People were saying he also got the award, I think, for the best wide receiver voted on by the defensive backs. He creates separation, 93rd percentile in separation over the past 2 years. Also, what's going on, Bears Junkie, and what's going on, Ron Bear, down indeed. But yeah, Ladd McConkey out of Georgia, more of that slot wide receiver. And, he played at the Senior Bowl, even though some spots they put him down as a junior. I can't wait for the COVID rule to be gone because he's technically a senior, but kind of a junior, right? But even though that he only had 30 receptions for 483 yards, that's not how Georgia wins. Georgia spreads the ball out. Georgia runs the football well. When the ball is in McConkey's hands, he does well. And consistently, he was always creating separation. And I think that Ladd McConkey has now shown you can draft me at the end of the first round, and I will be a contributor day one. And when we look at what the Lions did, right? How did the Lions get such a good draft class? Well, the Lions, what they did was they just drafted players that that have that kind of high floor. Ladd McConkey has a high floor. He's a good separator, good player, can create, very good wiggle to his routes, and also someone that is a playmaker that has good speed. So even though he's a little smaller, 5'11", 185, still a very good player not to sleep on. But then there's another person that we have not talked about much. And I had to create a new profile for him, and that's Ricky Pearsall, another slot receiver. But yet again, it's just these slot receivers really showed a lot of quickness to them. And Pearsall is kind of like the off-brand version of McConkey that you can get in the third round rather than in the early second or even in that late first. Ricky Pearsall was another person constantly cooking the corners, constantly creating separation, and 6'1", 192, so a little bit taller than that kind of stereotypical shorter slot wide receiver, but very physical. And also the thing that's crazy about him, because we haven't really previewed him, watch his highlight films. This guy just floats in the air. He'll just jump up for the ball and just float, grab it, and just make some of these amazing circus catches. Definitely someone not to sleep on because we want to add as many talented playmakers with whoever is going to be the quarterback. Whether it is we trade Fields for Caleb and we end up going with Caleb, no matter who it is, we need those wide receivers. You see, I hate saying this, you see what the Packers did. The Packers drafted a whole bunch of young wide receivers, and it took them a while to get better. But we already have DJ Moore. Draft some of these young wide receivers and just kind of develop them around our quarterback. And yet, Chad, 100% agree. Separation is key if we end up keeping Justin. That was one of my biggest critiques when the Bears traded for Chase Claypool. It was, listen, Fields does not throw it to someone if someone is NFL open. He throws it to people that are wide open, the college open, right? He throws it to wide open people. So yeah, separation, huge. And even if it's Caleb Williams too, having that wide open separation makes that quarterback's job significantly easier. And having someone that is just consistently open, consistently will be at their spot is someone that the Bears definitely need to get. Let's keep on moving, shall we? So let's talk about kind of the offensive line, or actually, I'll talk running backs real quick. So I don't have anything too crazy out there. Marshawn Lloyd, the running back out of USC, looked very good. Also, Ray Davis out of Kentucky, a large running back that also can break tackles, someone that looked very good during some of these practices, which is even better because these running backs, it's hard to if you're someone that breaks tackles like a Ray Davis, it's hard to really show how good you are because no one's tackling you, right? Because if your whole thing is, I'll just overpower you, he ended up showing a good amount of wiggle that a lot of people were surprised by. But another person too, Rasheen Ali out of Marshall, was definitely the best looking running back, gigantic playmaker, really making these huge splash plays during practice, ultimately ends up tearing, I believe, his Achilles and will be out for 4 to 6 months. Someone to definitely just monitor. I think he could go probably late day 3 as just someone that wants to kind of take a flyer on him and just kind of stash him on IR potentially. But hey, 4 to 6 months, he could probably even start when he gets back in, but definitely made a lot of money, but then ultimately the unfortunate injury took him out later on. But let's talk about the offensive line, right? Let's talk about this offensive line. And look at that boy right there. Jackson Powers Johnson, he's too good. You know, ladies and gentlemen, Jackson Powers Johnson, we've talked about him before. He is the center prospect. He is phenomenal center guard combo. He's too good. And the reason why he's too good is now the Bears can't get him. He's now so good that he's probably going to go in the 20s in the NFL draft. Chances are the Bears are not going to have a pick around that area. He has now played himself out of the Bears because he's too good. He weighed in at like 332 at the center position. Just an enormous center. And they're like, yeah, he just bullied everybody every single day. No one could beat Jackson Powers Johnson. He's that guy. He's that guy that if the Bears really want a center, really want a guard, you could potentially trade that 9 pick back and bring him in. But it just really seems like Powers Johnson, I remember when on Pro Football Network's draft, you could draft him in like the 5th round. And everyone's like, dude, this guy's really good. Now he's going all the way in the 1st. That is just the way that the draft goes, right? Unfortunately, that's the way that the draft goes, right? You could trade with the Steelers potentially. I like that. But yeah, Powers Johnson, too good at the offensive line. But a couple other people too. Bo Limbert out of Arkansas looked pretty scrappy, good center, kind of interior offensive lineman. Christian Haynes was someone that was kind of up and down. The guard out of Connecticut during practice, he looked like a good, very shifty guy, very quick, very fast. But then when I was watching the game, I didn't really like what I saw out of him out of the game. But yet again, very small sample size. I think that the practices are more important than the actual game itself. But you just saw the natural athleticism that a Christian Haynes possesses. But some other players too on the tackle position, right? Because this is where the Bears like to draft some of these tackles. Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma measured very well, very long arms. So at the weigh-ins was great. Also, a lot of people said that he's just one of the most likable guys out there on the offensive line. He's just a natural, just because he's very athletic, but he just looked, they're saying that he's just this competitive dog and everybody really liked him. He was really the standout of the tackle class. But a couple other people, Christian Jones, tackle out of Texas. I think I mentioned him very quickly. He's the overall 133rd prospect, someone that has played a lot of football at college, and he's been a good swing tackle and really looked good. And you can get him very late, yet again, 133rd overall prospect, a true swing tackle if you want to move on from Larry Borum and replace him with someone that has some good upside. Also, Javon Foster, the 135 overall prospect, Missouri tackle, similar story, very good, just looked very solid. But another person, Kansas's Dominic Pooney, he played both guard and tackle. And why I call that out is it does seem like when the Bears try and go for a guard, they might want to try and get a tackle that then they can kind of move to the interior. Ja'Tyre Carter was one of those players. Pooney is someone that you can get later on that has that potential for being a tackle, but really ultimately would probably be best as a guard. Greg B also saying, I would rather trade down and get a Daniels or Penix. At this point, there is no way Caleb can match the hype. Fields can stay another year. Bold take, right? And I think it's interesting, right? Because Daniels, Penix, there's so many good quarterbacks, right? That we've covered on that show. Like there's so many darn good players. And Ron saying, are you going to be live on the Super Bowl? Good question. I did not think about this. I might go live Saturday. I'll keep you guys all posted. So make sure to hit the bell icon as well. So you get a notification. But I might go Saturday. I think Saturday might be the day to go with it because Super Bowl Sunday, maybe during the day during the Super Bowl, that might be what I ultimately end up doing. But good question, Ron. I'll keep you all posted with that. But let's continue going, shall we? So that's the offensive side of the ball. But as we always do, we talk offense, good offense. Now we get to be a little bit negative. Let's talk about the following players. Now, I also want to caveat this by saying I'm not saying that these guys are doom and gloom, that they're the worst players of all time, that they'll never be drafted, never be good again. What I'm saying is just there's a handful of players that this was a big shot for them, that this was their big resume, this was their big interview process, and they ultimately just didn't didn't do well during the interview, so to speak, right? And I want to start with the quarterbacks. Joe Milton out of Tennessee, to me, just looked bad. I liked some of his tape, but just seeing Joe Milton, the quarterback out of Tennessee, just did not look like a viable NFL quarterback out there at all. And also, too, like I mentioned before, when you look at the quarterback prospects after this time, after like this week, I really created kind of this separation, as you can see those on YouTube can kind of see it based on the graphic. I really have like this day 2 is just kind of blank. Then you have the top 6 quarterbacks, and below that, you have everybody else. Now, Tagovailoa, Tua's younger brother, actually looked pretty good. He was at Maryland Terrapin. He played at the Shrine Bowl, looked pretty solid. Sam Hartman looked okay. But I think ultimately you really saw that there's a clear separation with the top guys and the bottom guys with that. But let's talk about someone that I just felt like didn't look good, and that was Devontae Walker. Tez Walker was someone that you look at his tape at Kent State, and he looked dominant. He looked great. And watching him during the game, he just looked lost. There was a handful of passes that were going right to him, and he just simply dropped it, or he simply just didn't make a good play on the ball. And it was very concerning. It actually reminded me a little bit of Anthony Miller, where when the ball was in the air, and actually that might be my actual comp to him, because when the ball was in the air, he just simply did not bring down the ball. He simply was not going for it. He was not, he just seemed very disinterested, which was really what he looked like during his UNC days. And overall, I'm like, I don't want this guy on my team. When I was watching him, like this will be my biggest bold take, right? Because I just really did not like what I saw out of Tez Walker at all. And then in the practices, he created separation during the practices, but he ultimately just dropped a lot of passes that are out there. And I just, Oracle saying out there, what's going on? Like, that's a nice comparison. Yeah, I really do think so, because it just seemed like it was that natural disinterest that Anthony Miller had for the ball, right? When the ball was in the air, he's like, yeah, nah, not today. And it just felt like that was what Tez Walker was doing all day. So did not make a lot of money. And to me, he dropped pretty far on my board. Now, I was higher on him because I really liked his Kent State tape. And when I saw him, I was like, after that Senior Bowl, he's going to be dropping down, because I really thought he was going to show that, listen, I'm a round 2 wide receiver. After watching that, I'm starting to think he's more of, dare I say, an early day 3. I just really did not like what I saw out of him. But let's continue going on, right? Let's continue the depression on these wide receivers. Malachi Corley, someone who is a huge favorite of a lot of fans all across the NFL. But yet again, you can see what I put as his weakness. His weakness is playing wide receiver. His strength is yards after catch. He's a running back that plays the wide receiver position. And now his comp that everyone has, like that I have, Deebo Samuel. The guy looks like Deebo Samuel. The guy is built like Deebo Samuel. He breaks tackles like Deebo Samuel. He is a fierce beast like Deebo Samuel. But the way that he runs routes is like Laviska Shenault, right? And you see that Deebo is Deebo for a reason, because when he came out of college, he could run routes. Malachi Corley, this was his interview process to show that he can run routes, and he failed. He did not show NFL coaches that he could truly run routes. He's a playmaker. He's a running back. He's a running back that's playing wide receiver, and he really kind of just added into that. And it's sad, because I want these explosive playmakers, but he needs to learn how to play. He just kind of showed, I need to learn how to play the wide receiver position. I'm still a running back. I'm still the most explosive playmaker that you could throw out there. But yet again, it's kind of like Velus, actually. I'll throw Velus as that. Where, small Quentin Johnson, good comp with Oracle of Hallis. Like, and, Velus kind of, and also I don't want to comp him to Velus, because Velus was never quick, right? But it does kind of remind me a little bit of that, where he's not necessarily a wide receiver, more of like that playmaker. But another person, too, that this kind of pains me, because I thought that this was a guy that I thought that he was going to jump up a lot of boards. And I actually did not print off my draft guide for him. But the other person is Xavier Legette, the wide receiver out of South Carolina. He had one dominant season at South Carolina. Kind of reminds me of, at first, he was the DK Metcalf, the straight line speed, the vertical guy that can go either vertical or short, but he was dominant. But before that, he hardly got even 100 yards the year before. But then this season, gets buff. He's like 230. He's huge. But then they measure him and he's only 6'1". Now, 6'1" is still tall, for the average person. But when your calling card is that you're bigger and stronger than everybody else and you're only 6'1", it's just a little disappointing, especially when his arms were also a little bit shorter. And now a lot of people are saying, well, maybe he's more like an Alshon Jeffrey, where Alshon was good with the Bears, but when you only have 1 year of production and also during the practices had very big ups and downs, very hot, very cold, it's someone that kind of makes you feel a little bit uneasy if you were to invest a second round pick into this person. So that was someone that was a little bit of a faller just because he was shorter and also, but Oracle of Hallis is saying Legette's measurables made people really confused because that was the thing. He's huge. He's a big guy. And ultimately, when your calling card is your size and your speed, and your size kind of goes down, he's still huge, but it kind of makes people feel a little uneasy if you're going to invest day two capital into a person like that, especially someone who's only coming off of one actual good season, right? Normally when we say one good season, it's like, oh yeah, you had 700 yards the year before. The dude literally had like 100 yards the year before and then goes back and then puts a 1,000-yard season. So really went from nothing to something, which could be an awesome story, but it's also something that's really risky when you're trying to invest in high capital. But a couple other people that just kind of that were a little bit fallers. Kingsley Egukan, who is the tackle out of Florida. He was already kind of someone that was a late round tackle, really struggled and just did not look like he should really be there during the practices. But also a couple other players as well. T'Vondre Sweat, I threw him out there, the tackle out of Texas. Now, don't be alarmed. He's 360 pounds, and he chose not to weigh in. So that rubs a lot of NFL teams the wrong way. And then also they said, too, when he was out there, he's this big, hulking defensive tackle. So we're switching over to the defensive side of the ball. The guy is a great athlete. The guy played very well. He's also on my risers because he's a riser and a faller. Because when he was out there, he was dominant. He was very good. For someone who's 360, probably plus pounds, the guy is crazy good. He's a crazy good and talented player. But how many 360-pound players are out there that play consistent snaps? His tape, how good he is, he should go in the second round, no question. But if he's not going to be out there, that's where you're going to see someone like him probably drop to the third or maybe even into the fourth round. That's where also they said when he was taking practice snaps, it was very gassed very quickly. So a lot of questions about T'Vondre Sweat out of Texas's physical, just can he stay on the field, right? Eddie Goldman, that's why he dropped. Very good, but just very big boy. So that is his big question. That's why he's kind of on the fallers and also risers at the same time, as weird as that sounds. But also another person I want to call out, Braswell, someone that I put as my, he was even on my, my thumbnail on YouTube. That Braswell was someone that I was really looking forward to seeing because yet again, he needed to kind of show that, hey, I'm not just the other guy on opposite Dallas Turner. And what he showed was, no, I kind of am the other guy. Now, I still think that he goes in day two, but I think he was getting so much hype that he was going to be a late first round pick. And then he just didn't really show. He didn't really kind of seize the moment, right? He didn't look like that he belonged in the first round, just kind of solidified himself as more of, you could draft me in day two. I still have a lot of talent, former 5-star athlete. You could draft me in day two. So just didn't kind of vault himself up in the first round conversation like I was kind of hoping he would do. Now, the last person I want to bring up is just Kalen King, the cornerback out of Penn State. And Kalen King was someone that was incredible at Penn State a year ago, but this year didn't look good. Like, he was insane the year before, but this year, not good, and flat out just struggled constantly in coverage, just consistently beaten. And yes, playing corner is difficult. And in a lot of these drills, you're supposed to, corners are going to get cooked by the wide receivers. Kalen King just looked below average compared to all the other corners during practices. Kalen King, Penn State, lost a lot of money this week. But let's stop being pessimistic. Let's stop talking about these fallers, shall we? Also, Oracle, I'll just go through some comments real quick. Oracle saying, heard he may, maybe 380 for T'Vondre Sweat. Just absolutely huge. Yeah, anti-tush push. Yeah, you just put him in front. No one's going to move him. But yeah, that's why he was just dominant. Like, he's just huge. Also, Greg B saying Bears need a solid wide receiver too. Across from Moore can only get those guys first round or top of the second. And I think that this is a big piece too, because I went through a bunch of data and I wanted to see just where Pro Bowlers come from. And maybe I'll do an episode on that, right? And I threw together just where Pro Bowlers, and yeah, Pro Bowlers are a little hit or miss, but wide receiver was the position that, like, out of all the positions, they had the highest hit rate of Pro Bowlers in the second round. The hit rate of drafting, like when you draft a wide receiver in the second round, it is the highest chance that guy will become a Pro Bowler. It was crazy. The amount of Pro Bowlers and the amount of hits people have at wide receiver in the second round. And I think a big reason is because it's about the route running. Like, what you see that translates, it's not necessarily just the pure athleticism. That's where people get caught up with Kevin White and Quentin Johnston. It's about the route running. You see who plays well right out the gate. Cooper Kupp, phenomenal route runner. Puka Nacua, phenomenal route runner. Like a Keenan Allen, it's about the route running as a wide receiver, because if you're a route technician like Marvin Harrison Jr. or Justin Jefferson, that's how you get open. That's how quarterbacks trust you. You have to be good. And I think that's where you might see a lot of these second round wide receivers do pretty darn good. We had Johnny Newton, dude, phenomenal 3 technique. I would love to see him out there for sure. But let's keep on moving, shall we? So we got some defensive linemen. Now, let's talk about the D linemen. And boys, ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, Laiatu Latu is an absolute freak of nature. And he showed it even more so. And honestly, he might become my edge 1. Dallas Turner right now is my edge 3, and I have Jared Verse as my edge 1 because I just like consistency. And Jared Verse to me has been a very, very consistent edge rusher overall, but someone who's just been an absolute freak of nature. Laiatu Latu, 13 sacks last year, 2 interceptions at a defensive end, and 2 forced fumbles, 37 hurries, 25.8% pass rush win rate, right? And for anyone that's like, well, is he going to be able to do that during the Senior Bowl? This dude cooked so many freaking people. And here's the thing too. He was helping his teammates, coaching them how to do moves. Also, I've heard multiple scouts say this. You do not have counter moves to the extent that Latu has at this age. Because what people were saying, and there was one thing, and I have this down in my notes. One time, Latu was going against, I think it was actually Guyton. He was going against a tackle, and he tries his first move. He's beaten. The offensive linemen cheer. They all celebrate. They're like, yeah, because like offensive line won. Latu instantly counters it, and then it's dead silent. That's how good he is, because he has pro-level counter moves, which you just don't see at a player that's this young. He is beyond his years with just the technique that this guy possesses. But the big problem, He did, he did kind of, you saw his measurables, shorter arms. I think that's going to be his big thing. It's going to be all physical traits. He has shorter arms. He had his neck injury. He's still 6'5", 265, so he's still built. But it's just those shorter arms that is going to be the biggest question with his game. But he was just an absolute freak of nature, beat everybody. Didn't matter who it was. He won. He won every freaking time. He is so good at defensive end. And I think that the Bears might see this and go, all right, right? And will they want someone that plays like Latu, or like that kind of has the athletic measurements like Latu? Broski, what's going on, my friend? We have not talked in so long. Nice to see you back, my friend. Welcome back. But yeah, Latu, absolute freak of nature when it comes down to it all. And yeah, just really, really good. Broski, though, asking, can he play 4-3-D end? He won't be able to play as upright. I think that's another key piece. Whenever you have that neck injury, right? He is a little bit upright. That was another negative that I had. Shorter arms, very upright when he's rushing. That is a big question, but the hand usage is just elite. That's why he does remind me a little bit of AJ Epinesa, and I think with the Bears' new defensive coordinator, definitely something to see. Yeah, Oracle saying, oh yeah, I saw that. Spin got nullified and went down push-pull. Yeah, he's just the amount of counters, man. Latu, I could talk about him all day, and I feel like I already have been. Like he gets 5 minutes all to himself. Latu is crazy good. That's why when I see like a Dallas Turner has some crazy good speed, but I'm a sucker for hand usage. I am. Like with a pass rusher, if someone has pass rush moves, I love it. Like that's what I'm really looking forward to. And that's what a lot of people say you need, because when you go to the next level, the people that win by pure athleticism have a more difficult time transferring over. But another person that looked very good was Darius Robinson out of Missouri. Played defensive tackle and defensive end, and he was someone that was projected to go in the 3rd round. And now Lance Zerloin's newest mock draft has him going all the way in the 1st. So yet again, another person looked very good. Inside outside versatility. You know the Bears love that, but ultimately looks like he's playing himself into the late 1st round. And another person too at the defensive end spot that I'll be honest here, I'm actually shocked at how good this player was, and that is Adisa Isaac. And this is the guy that, yet again, he was better. He beat out Chop Robinson as the starter. He started over Chop Robinson, the other defensive end from Penn State. And this guy looked fast. This guy was consistently beating players, consistently creating pressure. And when you see him, he's a very good run defender. You look at his run stop percentage, 11.4% run stop, which is really, 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 really good for a defensive end, and only 13% pass rush win rate, which isn't great, isn't something to write home about. But during the practices, very good, consistently beating players. I still think he kind of goes late day 2, but I think he might actually be more of like a late 2nd round player based on his performance, because he just turned a lot of heads. But let's continue going through and talk about another player that was impressive. And now this person is the thumbnail for my show for the show today, and that is none other, not Cole Bishop. 1 second. I have very, very small graphics that I'm like clicking. I'm like, I think it's this guy. And then I click on him. Nope, wrong guy. But this is the right person. Michael Hall Jr., defensive tackle out of Ohio State. He's projected to go in the 3rd round, and this guy was tailor-made to be impressive at the Senior Bowl. This guy's 6'2", 280, so he's a smaller, lighter weight defensive tackle, but this guy wins with his first step. And even though he's 280, this guy is powerful. 18.3% pass rush win rate. Very, very good at a defensive tackle position. 7.3% run win rate. Even though that he had very good win rates, 24 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 0 forced fumbles, 22 hurries. He's more that tweener, which is always difficult at that next level. Like, I know that the Bears might like that tweener model. I always get nervous about that because I never see that really truly work. But he won. He dominated the Senior Bowl practices because he's just faster and quicker than everyone else. If the Bears are looking for more of a quick-footed 3 technique rather than like power with the Javon Dexter, Hall really fits that mold. Someone to definitely, that's his tape, fun to watch because you just see this defensive tackle, this big boy, just get off the line of scrimmage and seems very, very rocked up. Broski also saying MHJ or Neighbors and Bowers is the way to go at number 9. I do agree with that, especially, or like for me, when I look at the 9th pick, something that I actually wanted to bring up, and I might actually do a separate show all about this. Malik Neighbors now is starting to drop all the way down to the Bears at number 9, which to me is phenomenal. Malik Neighbors is a very, very good wide receiver. I have an elite grade on him, and I have Rome Odunze as a first-round grade. I think that Neighbors is very, 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 very good. But then let's go. Latu played, and then breaking his neck. That's the thing that with Latu is that neck injury is the biggest question. I think that's going to be what the Bears ultimately will have to be diving into with that. Also, Greg B saying Bears fans can get a better sense of what's to come in March when free agency opens. Agreed. It's up to Poles to convince upper management to keep Fields. Yeah, it's going to be Poles' decision no matter what. Also, this reminds me of something, Greg, because I think also something that is always funny to me to watch with mock drafts is when there's a big mock draft and it's like a 7-round mock draft and someone drafts a tackle in like the 7th round and people are like, oh, thank God we addressed the tackle position, right? Because I think like that's where I love that we get to do all the mock off seasons, because when we do the mock off seasons, then it's like, yeah, like you get to see, oh, the Bears are going to add a safety. The Bears are going to add a center. The Bears, right? They should invest in a veteran center, in a veteran safety if they're going to move on from Eddie Jackson. There's so much offseason that is still out there. Also, Broski saying, I'm a Penn State fan. Not sure where you're getting he started over Chop. Yeah, I saw that somewhere where they're like, yeah, he started over Chop. And that's what I thought too, was like, I saw that. I'm like, I'll jot that down. But yeah, I think that they played more all together. But Isaac and Chop, same height and weight, and both are bendy. Isaac is from the Bronx. Isaac and Robinson both lived in the backfield. And also, Broski saying MHJ and Neighbors, best 2 wide receivers by far. Agreed. I know that everyone likes Rome Odunze because he's tall and everything like that. I think Rome Odunze is darn good. And if the Bears draft him at 9, I'm happy, but I will be jumping for joy if the Bears get Malik Neighbors because he's just so freaking fast. Just the acceleration is crazy. It kind of reminds me of DJ Moore a little bit. Also, Chad saying, I would rather have Stover than Bowers. Great blocker and great hands. To me, Bowers is good. And I think about what like the next level tight ends, the Kittles, the, Laporta. I was actually just watching some Laporta tape because I was watching someone talk about the top draft classes out there. And Bowers reminds me a lot of Laporta, even better when it comes to the break tackle ability. Laporta had what he was so good at was breaking tackles. He wasn't really a vertical catcher of a receiver like that. He was more of the break tackle. Bowers, very good blocker, and also a very willing blocker, very, very good blocker, but also has that break tackle ability, which I think kind of allows him to probably be a quicker transition. But Stover, to that same point, Stover is someone that you can get in the 4th, 5th round that I think, yeah, if Bowers isn't there, then yeah, Stover later round, really, really like that. But let's continue on. I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the defensive tackles real quick. Braden Fisk out of FSU as well. Quick, yet again, another speed person, because this is where the speed, the quickness is something that really kind of benefits you in these practices. Braden Fisk out of FSU, definitely someone at the defensive tackle position that really showed, hey, if you like a quick 3 technique, I'm the guy for you. And then, like I mentioned before, T'Vondre Sweat, my riser and faller, because he's big, so he fell, but he was still really good. He's still a very good player that impressed a lot of people. But then going to the linebackers, I don't think that the Bears are going to draft a linebacker. They might, though. Peyton Wilson was the only person that really kind of stood out at the linebacker position. And something that I think everyone should know, if you're a linebacker, don't play at the Senior Bowl. And the reason is that you're going to just be embarrassed because you're just doing one-on-one coverage drills against running backs, and you're not going to be able to show how good of a tackler you are. That's why a lot of linebackers typically don't like to play at these things, because you just kind of look like an idiot out there. But Peyton Wilson was someone that looked good. Another person, J.D. Bertrand, out of Notre Dame, linebacker. He is the 224th overall prospect, so he's someone that the Bears could invest late in. But yeah, just seemed to be a natural linebacker out there. And yet again, another person that was barking out the calls and kind of telling everyone what was going to happen before the snap. Just showed that he had a good head on his shoulder. But let's go over to the safeties position and let's start talking about some of the coverage players who made some money. And let's start with the safety, Cole Bishop, because Cole Bishop was someone that I was watching the tape, and he didn't really blow me away by any stretch of the imagination. 6'2", 207, and yet again another COVID junior / senior. But last year, 60 tackles, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, 3 PBUs, and 3 sacks. This guy, though, 6'2", very good frame, and he was everywhere. He just made plays out there during the game. Just seemed to be someone that they were consistently calling out. That's just what he is, right? He's very good at mirroring wide receivers. He's just a sound player. Now, I still have a question if he's actually going to be a starter, but I think he could be a sound player in the NFL for years to come. Just a very good foundational player. But another safety too, Jalen Simpson, the Auburn cornerback that played a lot of safety, just looked more of a natural type of a player at the safety position during practices. But then I have the last handful of players. Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo. You might have already heard this. This guy, yet again, another person that played so well that the Bears could never even draft him. So we don't really need to talk about him, but you'll see this guy rise up, literally locked everyone down, because the only reason why he was projected to go in the late first was because he was playing for Toledo. He didn't cover anyone good. But then he goes here and he basically locks down absolutely everybody, except Roman Wilson did look good against him a handful of times. But Quinion Mitchell, very, very good player, just really blew people out of the water, might go all the way up to cornerback 1 because of how good and locked down he was during the practices. Other players too, Cam Hart, Notre Dame corner. And yet again, I don't know if the Bears are really going to draft a safety. I still feel like they're just going to tag Jalen Johnson and kind of ride it out and see how he plays this year. But Cam Hart, 6'3", more of a cover 3 cornerback, looked pretty good out of Notre Dame. Max Melton out of Rutgers looked good. He played slot and outside, so he kind of showed some positional versatility. And the last one, the overall 275th overall prospect, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. out of Louisville. He was a late addition to the Senior Bowl and turned a lot of heads. Some people were even saying that he was the second best cornerback out there, and definitely someone that a lot of people are just, there's so many prospects out there that you can only watch so many people. Jarvis Brownlee is someone that I'm going to be grinding the tape on now, because if you can draft this guy in day 3, and supposedly he was looking like one of the best corners out there, definitely someone to keep an eye out for. Like I mentioned before, let me know what you think. Was there anybody that I missed out of this list that really impressed you? And holy cow, we've been going for an hour. I know a lot of you guys don't like the hour shows. I know a lot of you also like the hour shows. So I hope you appreciate this out there. Let's, though, go through and just kind of end this out with some of the comments if there's any questions out there. But let's see, too. Oracle of Hal is saying, I feel guilty coveting Cooper DeJean for the Bears secondary with so many other needs, right? I think that's the thing. I have just become accustomed to watching a lot of cornerbacks. And it's weird. It's weird not having corners as someone that the Bears could target. But I look at the roster and I go, oh yeah, they have Terrell Smith. Like they could add another one. I think maybe like a backup slot would be good. But yeah, maybe then like a Max Melton or someone like that. But yeah, corners are just good. The whole Jalen Johnson situation is weird. I hope they don't sign him to like a max deal, a quote unquote max deal, right? To pay him like the top paid corner. They're just going to tag him. I think it makes way too much sense. Oracle of Alice saying too, Bauer's play strength pops on tape, Kittle-ish. That's my biggest comp is he reminds me of Kittle just with his ability to break tackles, just his natural aggressiveness. He just reminds me of Kittle so much. And I think that with the Bears, you just get a lot of playmakers. But I do think that Stover, though, is a good, solid backup player out there. Broski saying Bears can trade down and get MHJ or Neighbors or Bowers. That would be interesting because I'm still curious to see what they do with Caleb. And also another thing, too, with the Senior Bowl, a lot of people saying that the Bears are probably just going to draft Caleb Williams. Also, Brad Spielberger. The only time that he ever says any inside information, he's actually usually right about it. And he said what he was hearing was that the Bears were like, if the Bears were to trade with the Commanders, it would be the Bears pick, the 40th pick. They would get that back. They would obviously get the second pick, and then they would get a first the next year, which is actually a lot of capital just to move up one spot when you think about the whole Bears Trubisky trade. Was, I believe, a third and a fourth just to move from third to second. It just kind of shows how big Caleb Williams is and how much the Bears kind of sought after. Think about this first pick overall. But also, if Ryan Poles does not like Caleb Williams, he's playing this to a T. No matter what it is, act like you love Caleb Williams because you need someone to trade more. Even if the Bears don't like Caleb Williams, they should act like they absolutely love Caleb Williams out there. So, but yeah, I think another thing too is they could always trade back or trade up for a Neighbors or something like that too. But I'm interested to see what ultimately ends up going on. But Broski's saying too, Neighbors is another Chase or Jefferson, and MHJ is better. Both of these guys are future stud number ones. I totally agree with that. And Sourcing Summer Stuff saying we should look to the Iowa Hawkeyes. Hey, anybody that's an Iowa Hawkeye just always seems to dominate. Offensive line, tight end, right? I forgot who the actual Iowa Hawkeye that's out there right now, but he is, I forgot who he is, but yeah, tight end as well. Another Iowa Hawkeye tight end coming out here. Oracle of Hal saying Quinion Mitchell impressed. Agreed. Greg B saying, Brad, what is your current top 5 Bears positional needs ranking in order? His is wide receiver, defensive end, tight end, safety, and guard. Good question. Let's see. So I have to say this. I think center for me is definitely number 1 because we don't have a center, right? So I think that to me, that is number 1 by far just because you need someone. And I think too, when you look at historically just how players do year 1, offensive line usually need an extra year to play well. Especially at tackle. But I think center, you can kind of strike goal earlier. But center to me is definitely number 1. Safety to me isn't a huge need. It's more because of Eddie Jackson's salary that you kind of have an issue. Like you don't have to move on from him. So that's where to me safety's not a huge need. But I would say more of safety. Center number 1. I'd say wide receiver number 2, just because you're not going to have anybody out there. For sure. So I think that is number 2, and defensive end number 3, because I think that you need an actual good defensive end. And guard is interesting because Nate Davis, I still believe that he should kind of regress back to the mean. And for those that want to correct me, regress to the mean, actually, it's not progressing to the mean. It's really weird with that from what I've seen. So I think that he's going to play back as an average player, hopefully this year. Low key backup tight end, like legit. We need a backup tight end is like a sneaky need because I'm tired of like these 1-year tight ends that kind of come in. I want a backup tight end. And then also I kind of want a D tackle. like an actual, like another D tackle, like a veteran D tackle in the middle, just to kind of round out the room, just because you have the younger D tackles that you want to get better. But I think having a solidified defensive tackle similar to like what Billings is, I think would just round out that room very, very, very well. But yeah, I know it's not the exact top 5, but I think that's kind of where I'm at, because I think guard, you should draft a guard slash center like Jackson Powers Johnson, but someone that can kind of move around a little bit, because you need another player that you can hopefully kind of take a Nate Davis's job. But I think overall, though, if I would go with a 5, though, I would actually go with guard as 5, just because that is something that you do want to at least improve on. But Broski's saying too, Bears need a free safety. Yeah, like I mentioned, I think that ultimately Eddie Jackson, I think Eddie Jackson's going to get cut, because I just don't see him taking a huge pay cut. If he does, kudos to him. But I think ultimately, yeah, they need to do something at safety, though, if he ends up gone. But yeah, Bo Melton's brother. I'm just kind of going through some of these. Broski saying PSU Theo Thompson would be a nice 4th-round pick. Agreed. Very solid tight end. That's another thing, too. Tight ends didn't really show out at all inside of the Senior Bowl as well. Yeah, Theo Johnson, 6'6", 260, bear down 2 first-rounders. Exactly right. Like, we have 2 first-rounders. It's a good day to be a Bears fan. Yeah, so, yeah, like, the Commanders trade would be interesting if they ended up going that way. I just don't necessarily like Drake May. I'm not fully convinced on him. I think he's a very good player, but yet again, he's got all like the elite tools. Just kind of going through some other piece. Yeah, we got a lot of that. And then Broski's saying, no, Brad, you want to draft a pure center, not a guy who can move around. You need your center. Yeah. Like, I think to me, it's like if you can find someone with the positional versatility, I like that, right? But I will agree with you on that, where I think if it comes down to a guard or a center that you want to draft, I would rather go with the center to then have like that at least backup. But also too, we have Kramer. I'm Doug Kramer, who we did get rid of, but I'm curious if he's actually going to be something like, right? Can he at least be the backup? But guys, ladies, gentlemen, we have gone over an hour officially. We have not gone this long in quite some time. So we'll give ourselves all a round of applause. I hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to capture when we go live next. I believe it'll be out on Wednesday. And then for the weekend show, maybe Sunday during the day or Saturday night, we will just see. But thank you so much. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's